Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk about something that I've kind of talked about a little bit on my channel before, and that is the best and worst of living in New York City. So I think a few months back, actually like now it has to be over like 8 months ago, when I filmed a video with Tom that was more about like our tips and tricks and whatever about living in New York City. Now that I've been here almost a year, I thought it would be nice to share with you guys what I've been thinking so far and what I've enjoyed and what I haven't enjoyed as much about living in the city. So I wrote a few points on my phone just so I don't get off topic. So let's just dive right in, and I'm gonna start with the best things. So probably my favorite thing about living in New York City is that there's always something to do. There are always cool things and people around. There are always awesome opportunities. There are always places you can go, museums, good food, theater, concerts, like all those sorts of things. That's always available to you almost at any point in time. Whereas living in the suburbs or living in a rural area, or even just living in a different type of city, you might not have the access to that as much as you do in New York City. If you're bored on a Saturday, you could literally just walk to a theater and get tickets to a show. You could literally just go to the box office and get tickets to a show and go see a show, or anything like that, which I really personally enjoy, and I think that's an opportunity you don't get really elsewhere. And along with the cool people and the cool things that are going on, you also just have those random experiences, such as like a movie filming on your block. Like all the time, things are being filmed right by where I work, or just in general in Manhattan. There are always things being filmed, because obviously a lot of films take place in New York City, and it's just so cool. You'll accidentally just be walking in the street and pretty much end up on a set, and you get to like see how everything, the inner workings of everything, which you don't really get to see everywhere else. I mean, obviously California probably has a similar experience, but it's just really cool because of like the history of New York. So along with that, the second thing I would say would be that everything is always at your fingertips. So pretty much any hour of the day, literally at like 3 a.m., you can just place an order and get food right to your door, or you can just go out somewhere and get food, or get some item that you might need, some clothing item, whatever it is. It's almost always easy to access things in New York City. As they say, it's a city that never sleeps. Granted, it's not necessarily true. I've had experiences in which I thought there would be more going on at certain times and there wasn't. But besides that, I feel like things like groceries, like food deliveries, necessities, like anything that you would need from your local like Target or whatever, all those sorts of things you can almost always get, and things don't really close that early, and there's almost always some way to get what you need or want in New York City no matter what time it is. So it's like that convenience factor, which that could be something that happens elsewhere, but for me, being from upstate New York, that was definitely not the case. Like, we just got Uber, so things like that. Like, you can't just you would have to literally find a cab, like go online, research a number, research a company, call them, have the dispatcher call the freaking people, all that kind of stuff. And like, in New York City, it's just like, you can literally walk out of your door and get into a cab. So the convenience aspect, I really love. Another thing that I really like about New York is the opportunity. So when I say opportunity in this sense, I mean like the job kind of opportunities. I feel like in New York, it's so easy to find something to do, like to find a job. And I don't want this to come off like ignorant or something, because I know obviously a lot of people do have a hard time finding a job in New York and elsewhere. But what I mean by that is there's a lot of different types of job opportunities, and even if it's not exactly like what you want at the time, you can almost always find like some sort of starting point, like bartending or food service or Uber driving or buying people's groceries for them, all those sorts of things. And people actually make good money off of that, in which they can afford to live here. So I think it's really cool, because it's not just, okay, you gotta find your 9 to 5, and if you don't find it, you're SOL. It's like, there are many things that you can get into to kind of make money and afford a lifestyle in New York. Granted, I'm not saying it's gonna be like the best, most fancy lifestyle ever, but I think a lot of people are able to make it work and then slowly climb their way to where they wanna be. And along with that, actually, I think it's cool because a lot of people in New York are doing multiple things. Like, a lot of people in New York have a 9 to 5, but then they also have a side gig or just even a hobby. And it's really cool because it's so common. It's not like you go to your 9 to 5, you go home, wake up, do it again the next day. Like, most people have a lot of things going on, a lot of things that they're doing, which I think is really quite awesome, if you ask me. And then this is just like a random little one, but I really do love, this is my favorite place in the city, and it's Battery Park City. And it's really cool because it's by the water, but the thing is, you still are surrounded by the city, and you get this really beautiful view. I can insert a picture here of the city, but with the juxtaposition of the water. And I don't know, I just love it so much. It's like a calmer area in the city where people aren't always running and screaming and doing the most. Like, you get to like actually feel like you're in a more, I don't even know what the word is, but an area that's just more calm and kind of standard versus the typical hustle and bustle of New York City that is literally non-stop. So that's like one of my favorite little places, and I try to go there as often as possible. I always frequent the Battery Park Regal Cinema because I just love going down there, and you can like ride your bike without having to like, you can literally just ride for so long. And I mean, I know you can do the same thing in Brooklyn and stuff, but it's just the vibe there. It's my vibe. It's up my alley. And obviously, not obviously, but I'm a person that loves the water, and I would just literally love to just sit by the water and just listen to the waves crash all the time if I could. So to find that in New York City and still have the big city like surrounding you is, I don't know, I feel like it's a little cute, little cool vibe, and it makes it, and it's something I guess you wouldn't necessarily expect, or maybe just because of where I'm from, but I didn't expect something like that in here. Okay, and now for the worst. So number one, and I'm sure you guys have heard this time and time again, but New York City is insanely expensive. Oh my gosh, it's so expensive. It's just like, it blows my mind because there's not really much reason for it when you think of like the actual life you're living. It's really not that like worth it, I would say. I think it's worth it in the, well, let me rephrase that. It's worth it, but it's worth it in the way that like you're giving up something to get something else. Like, I feel like in New York City, you'll never, unless you are really affluent or like, you know, well off or what have you, you'll never really get to have everything that you want in New York City without paying a premium, essentially. Like, if you find a really great apartment, you're probably gonna have to cut down on your cost of living and like things like that. Like, say you eat out a lot, you find your really cool apartment, but it's thousands and thousands of dollars, you might have to give up eating out a lot. Like, there's always some kind of like sacrifice when it comes to living in New York City. It's hard to find a scenario in which you get to have everything you want. And I mean, it's just not life. Like, you don't get to have everything you want in life all the time. But in terms of New York City, it's very common that you have to compromise something, which really sucks, because if it were less expensive, you wouldn't really have that same negative feeling, because you would be able to get more and experience more and do more. But because it's so expensive, you're limited. And along with that, it's because it's so expensive, it makes it hard to find a place to live that you can really afford by yourself, or that you don't have to shell a lot of money for. And so actually I was talking to my friend the other day, and we were talking about the fact that, like, because it's so busy in New York City, and this will actually tie in with my next point, but there's so much going on all the time, and you want to come home to a place that you feel comfortable and it's calm and it's cool and collected, or whatever the word is, and it makes you feel good, and you don't want to have to constantly be surrounded by all the hustle and bustle while you're in your place of comfort. But because the city is so expensive, it's almost impossible to get that place, or to not have to have roommates, or to get a place big enough where you can, you know, make it your own and have a setup that you enjoy that makes you feel good, or have a setup that in which you can have people over and stuff. It just makes it so hard to kind of have that safe haven, essentially, because it's so expensive. Okay, so next, one of my biggest pet peeves, and the thing that I mean, all this stuff is equal in my mind, but that I hate about New York City is that there's always so much going on. And I know before I said that's one of the things I love, but I'm talking about the actual environment. So people are constantly running, constantly screaming, constantly doing arbitrary things that make no sense. And it's like, it creates this like constant state of anxiety within the city. It's like, and also it just creates this dog-eat-dog environment. Like, you're trying to get in the subway, people are like literally pushing and pulling as if their like lives depended on it. And it's like if you say like, oh, excuse me, or something like that, people get annoyed with you. It's just like so negative because everyone's just always in a rush and there's just always something going on, and the energy just becomes so toxic in some ways. I don't know how to explain it. And I know that I have anxiety, so I know that it's specifically triggering for me, and other people might not have such annoyance with it. But the fact is, every morning you exit your house and it's like a rat race to get to the subway or wherever you're going, and it doesn't really facilitate such a positive energy, and it almost gets you riled up before you can even start your day in a calm way. And so then when you leave work, you have to kind of feel the same anxieties, and it's just like, it's a little bit much to have every single day that constantly going on. Okay, so another one that I don't really know if it's, so I live in Brooklyn now, and I'm not sure if the same kind of thing applies in Manhattan for the most part. I mean, it does in some areas. I've seen it in some areas, but I know where I live in Brooklyn, there is trash everywhere. Everywhere. It's like so, and it almost like honestly makes me feel so bad because it's like so bad for the environment. Like, why is there trash just literally blowing around on the floor everywhere you walk? It just makes no sense. But it's also just gross. Like, it feels like so every morning I walk 10 minutes to the subway, and along my walk on the sidewalk, I literally am dodging trash on my entire walk. And I don't know like what happens or like why that's the scenario, but it's like, and when I say trash, I don't mean like, oh, you have a little thing here and there. It's like one day, for example, here's a good one. I was walking down the street one day and there's trash blowing around on the floor and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, it's because it's windy, and all of a sudden, something falls from the sky and like lands on my head, like not lands, but like kind of passes my head, and I dodge it, and it's a plastic bag that was flying around in the air because there's so much trash everywhere that it's like flying around in the wind, and I'm just like, I've never seen anything like that in my life. And I've honestly seen people literally like say they're eating something or whatever, they'll just literally throw it on the ground as if it's just like, oh, the world's my garbage or something like that. And honestly, I hate that so much. Like, that is one thing I can say I despise about New York City. I've never seen that anywhere else, and it's just quite frankly gross. Okay, now I'm starting to feel bad because I know I have a lot of like things that I don't like right now, and my pros list was way shorter, but I'll keep it quick. I only have 2 more things. But winter in New York City. So I'm from upstate New York, so I know winter, and I understand cold. And I even did ice hockey in school, so we were always, so I did this in high school, so we were always traveling to the coldest places colder than Albany, to go to our games and stuff like that. So I'm really familiar with a cold winter. But here in New York City, the reason that the winter sucks so much is because you have to be outside. Like, you don't have any option, like, to get to work or whatever. Like, I think, like, so where I'm from, like, you would just get in the car and go where you need to go and then come home. And, like, you wouldn't need to really, like, walk much or, like, wait for, public transportation that much or something like that. There wasn't as much as, like, being in the thick of it. And it's, like, in New York City, for example, if it's snowing and you're going to work, you still have to walk your whatever commute to your subway, and then get in your subway, then get off your subway. Sometimes people have multiple subways they have to go on, or like, it's just, you have to be in the thick of it, and it's just like not fun. And like all the snow on the road is like basically black slush, and it's just like so ugly, and because it's like all the buildings and everything like that, it just looks and feels so dreary, and then it's cold, and it's just like, oh. But anyway, yeah, so I think like a lot of people actually have agreed with me on this. A lot of people that I've talked to at work and just friends and stuff like that. It's just tough winter in New York City. You're like trudging through the snow, and like you're all bundled up, and then it's just a whole bunch, it's just shenanigans essentially. Yeah, so if you don't like cold, and if you don't like winter in general, definitely do not move to New York City, or at least don't move in the winter. Okay. And so then I had 2 more things, but I'm just gonna, because this has gone on too long, I'm gonna say my last final thing that I hate about New York City, and that's the MTA. If you guys have not checked out the MTA's Twitter, oh, you're in for a joyride, baby, because it is hilarious how often they are messing up. There's literally never a day in which you go on your, like, I have the same commute every single day, and it's so rare. I actually should, like, keep track of how often I actually get delayed on the train, or the train doesn't come, or the train breaks down, or somebody's on the tracks, or whatever the scenario is. It always takes away from your day, and it affects your commute so much. Like literally, if one little thing goes wrong, like if you're stopped for 5 minutes, because usually it's never really less than 5 minutes, your whole entire day can be thrown off, because then if you have to take another train, the transfer, and all this different stuff, it becomes this whole like, MTA is your whole morning and your whole evening, and it just is a really bad system, and it doesn't really seem like they've been making too many updates, so it gets really frustrating, because it's like you can't even rely on your own public transportation that you pay for to do its job. So yeah, it's a bit of a nuisance, but I mean, I guess we are lucky just to have a subway system that gets you pretty much anywhere, but it doesn't work all that well. I don't know how lucky we are, but alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below if you have any best and worst of New York City of your own, or if you have any thoughts on mine. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.